We must provide hospital insurance for our older citizens financed by every worker and his employer under Social Security.
That's right. That was Medicare the president was talking about. That is the War on Poverty's most successful and most popular socialist program. Republicans don't mention that when they talk about the War on Poverty's alleged failure. President Johnson's top legislative aide, Joseph Califano, wrote in the Washington Monthly in 1999, if there is a prize for the political scam of the 20th century, it should go to the conservatives for propagating as conventional wisdom that the Great Society programs of the 1960s were a misguided and failed social experiment that wasted taxpayers' money. In fact, from 1963, when Lyndon Johnson took office, until 1970, as the impact of his Great Society programs were felt, the portion of Americans living below the poverty line dropped from 22.2% to 12.6%, the most dramatic decline over such a brief period in the 20th century. The current poverty rate in America in the wake of the financial crisis and recession is 15%, thanks in part, it's been held down thanks in part to programs like food stamps, also enacted by Lyndon Johnson. Today, in a speech at the Capitol, Marco Rubio announced his anti-poverty program.
What I am proposing today is the most fundamental change to how the federal government fights poverty and encourages upward mobility since President Johnson first conceived the War on Poverty 50 years ago today. I am proposing that we turn over Washington's anti-poverty programs and the trillions that are spent on them to the states. Our anti-poverty program should be replaced with a revenue-neutral flex fund. We would streamline most of our existing federal anti-poverty funding into a single agency. Then each year, these flex funds would be transferred to the states so they can design and fund creative initiatives that address the factors behind inequality of opportunity.
His prescriptions, I thought, were way off point and antithetical, really, to the goals that he's articulating. If you were to, by the way, this revenue-neutral flex fund stuff, that's a block grant. That means that instead of the federal government being able to ramp up its response to recessions, as we just saw, and was so important, as you mentioned in your introduction, to holding down the poverty rate over the deepest recession since the Great Depression, that function, that counter-cyclical function, would be gone in his revenue-neutral flex funds. And the idea that you would take that safety net function out of the picture is a huge step backwards. Anyone who wants to use the Reagan quip, and certainly Paul Ryan, Rubio, they all like to say this about losing the war on poverty, should consider the following statistic. If you take Social Security out of the picture, 44% of the elderly would be poor today. 44%. Add Social Security back into the picture, as it is, that goes down to 9%. Please explain to me, someone, how we lost the war on poverty when we're actively reducing elderly poverty from 44 to 9%. And that's just one example.